Welcome everyone to my Mindful Monday stream. We're having a little trouble with the participants here getting the time control right, but we'll get it slowly with time. 15 plus 2. 15 plus 2, I mean, I normally use 3-second increments, and naturally everybody gravitates toward that, but since the initial time control is so long, congratulations to Mule Skinner who got it right. 15 plus 2, he's the first one to get the correct time control. Alright, man. Constant Change was close, he had 15 plus 3, but we're not playing 15 plus 3, just 15 plus 2. Mule Skinner got it correctly. So 15 plus 2. Constant Change, please re-challenge to 15 plus 2. And somebody else, we had a challenge from another player. World Loser. No, World Loser is totally out of his head. 5 plus 3. He's like, was it 5 plus 3? Wait, is it Friday? Maybe World Loser doesn't watch the stream. He just challenges me at the right time, guessing what the time control is. So 15 plus 2, guys. I think once they see me playing 15 plus 2, and once the time limit is displayed here on the stream, I put it in the stream description. 15 plus 2. So let's start the game with Mule Skinner, and then everybody else will understand. Welcome, everybody. We're playing 15 plus 2. It's an extended stream by half an hour today till 1 o'clock. We're going to try to get in, if we can, 7 games. That's the goal. Play at least 7. Basically, effectively, what we call rapid chess, according to FIDE. What is the FIDE minimum for rapid chess, by the way? Does anybody know? It's probably like 15 plus 5 or something. Okay, knight f3, d6. Now we have a choice between all these central pawn moves. And if I was to play something like g3, I wonder... I think I should really claim some center here. Mule Skinner has played this Wade defense against me. But if I play e4, what is that? Where does that lead us? If I play e4 against Mule Skinner, something interesting maybe. Maybe a Sicilian or Pierce defense. It's actually a good spot to play the Pierce defense because white really only has the classical variation at its disposal. Bishop g4. So it's this Wade defense type of thing anyway. Nothing wrong with that, I guess. Yeah, we had this against Mule Skinner before. Anyway, welcome guys. We're playing 15 plus 2. Good to see you guys. Lots of greetings in the chat. Jeroen, I guess, takes Mondays off after all his difficult moderating on Sundays. Yeah, he probably has errands to run. Alright, so there are lots of options here. We could play something lame, but I wanna keep it somewhat theoretical. There's some people who play this weird Philidor gambit I've seen, like e5, pawn takes pawn, and then like knight c6. Why can't I draw an arrow? Yeah, there it is. e5, pawn takes pawn, knight c6. That I would reserve for fast time controls. If I were black. e6. e6 or c6 or knight to d7. I guess all these are moves. Now if I play c4, where does that leave Mr. Mule Skinner? I mean, he's not really a King's Indian player. If I play c4, we go into the realm of the King's Indian, basically, or King's Indian type of opening. I have had games with a few players here. I'm sure Mule Skinner was one of them. And became kind of Slav-like structure. So he doesn't have to go King's Indian. He can try to turn into Slav. I think with the bishop on g4, that's more appropriate to try to keep the pawns on white squares for black. Aktir, hi, I hope you win. I'm going to guess he's talking to me since it's my stream. We had our simul last night, guys. Not bad games. Some mistakes are bound to happen. But some really interesting games too yesterday. Every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. CET, we have a simul here on lichess. 20 players. Of course, we lost 2 or 3 players early on, and I'm gonna, every time I say it's 20 players, I think in the future when I do a simul, I'm just gonna automatically add like 2 extra players every time, because without fail, there's always some people who drop out right at the beginning. Blue Crow, whoops, missed the start. Salt Ego, thank you for the greetings. Good morning. You guys can get the time control right. Now you see the time control. We've got challenges. Everybody got it right. Amir, Constant Change, World Loser. 15 plus 2. I'm usually doing at least 3-second increments, so naturally everyone's challenging me to 15 plus 3. And this is only the second time we've done this longer time control. We're streaming till 1 p.m. 3-hour stream today. I'll probably lose my voice, but that's good. Everyone around me has some kind of cold, but I've been very careful to avoid it. Obviously, doing something like streaming, the last thing you need to do is get a cold and lose your voice. And not only do I do the streaming, but I also work for chesslecture.com, a website that creates chess videos and a lot of lessons. So I'm constantly talking, and it's really important not to get sick. C6. Yeah, I think this is probably best. I've even played a game or two in Blitz with this kind of setup with black, experimented with it. I'm not really expert enough to know if the move order is absolutely precise for both sides or not. Well, bishop e2 or bishop e3, there's 2 possibilities there. If you play something like h3, I think he'll keep the bishop. Trading it off seems like playable, but kind of a large concession for black. The only thing is, like if it becomes a Slav type of structure, the bishop isn't really that well placed on e3, so maybe I'll hold off on that. This square, it secures the d4 pawn. If it's a Caro-Kann, I guess that is a good square. If it's a Slav. But honestly, even in the Caro-Kann, it's not really a good square. It's just a place where the bishop goes because it has to, to like anchor the d4 pawn. It's not really a good square. Better squares, theoretically, like the bishop has more activity on g5 or f4. What is the IMGM difference? Let's just say it's 100 points. To make things, to simplify life, the average Grandmaster is like 2,500, and the average International Master is around 2,400. There are other requirements, these title norms, but to keep it simple, so we don't spend the day explaining all the rules of chess, FIDE chess titles, we'll just call it 100 points. That's oversimplifying, but basically that's about the average rating strength. You have to achieve some results above that within tournaments, but the difference is more or less 100 points. Okay, castles now. So what to do? We can play h3. Probably we should think about it. h3, bishop h5, g4 kind of weakens the king side. Alright, there we'll play our beloved bishop e3 I was just talking about. It's not the most active post for that piece. I mean, he could sometimes play some queen b6, for example, attacking my d4 pawn, attacking my b2 pawn. So the bishop e3 is a good, it's a big pawn, basically. It's a good pawn. Saltigo couldn't sleep, couldn't get my mind off of knight d5. Now, I couldn't sleep last night because I didn't eat dinner before the stream, and then when I finished the stream and went to sleep, I was so hungry I had to wake up and then eat food. And then I couldn't sleep, I guess, because I had a lot of sugar in my bloodstream or something. I don't know, but eventually I got to sleep, but it was pretty late. D5. I think we have to take the space here. I mean, this is the only really logical aggressive move. It's a cross between the advanced Caro-Kann and the Slav defense. But there's some Slavs that become like this because white plays e4 and e5 in some of the long lines of the Slav. Blue Crow says that after h3, black will take and play d5. It's not essential to take. You know, he may take, but he doesn't have to. You know, sometimes they play bishop h5. Many years ago, like 12 years ago, I had a game with the German IM Dima Werner like that, or Werner. He played bishop h5, and I think I played g4 and tried to track down his bishop, but usually that leaves black with two knights that are pretty good. I don't know. I don't really like playing h3 and g4. Sometimes you have to. Lack of a better plan, basically. DST, how you doing? Alright guys, so there's a lot of chess coming up. I've got the teen championship every week, Budapest and Hungarian. My team is, my Budapest team is pretty bad. Actually, they're not pretty bad, they're pretty good. My other team is pretty bad, but they're going to avoid relegation. It looks like we're going to avoid relegation because my team won convincingly yesterday, going from the bottom of the pack into the middle of the pack with just a few rounds left. And I've got the GM tournament coming up April 1st, April Fool's Day. I'm starting a closed tournament here in Budapest. I won't be streaming for that week and a half or so. April, the first 10 days in April, I'm going to be playing. So putting all my energy into preparing for this tournament. Knight FD7. H3 just weakens my king side. We're not going to waste any effort with that. There's a question about exchanging on D5 here. It actually looks like an Alekhine's defense. Queen B3. I guess Queen B3, Queen B6. White doesn't have anything. I mean, I could play Knight A4. Black's pretty solid here. We could take on D5 and try to use the C file, but his knight's coming to C6. This is really tough. I mean, we have more space. His knights are tangled up. But honestly now, he's threatening bishop takes f3, grabbing a pawn. I don't know what to do. I mean, I should be a little bit better. Spatial advantage, but as I said earlier, it's a lot like the Slav. He's got a very, very solid position. Do you know Elsan Gayamagami? Well, I was just mentioning him the other day. I don't actually know him. I just always liked his games. We both play the Blumenfeld Gambit with black. I haven't heard his name lately, but player I definitely would respect. C takes d5, queen b3. It reminds him of the French exchange variation. What? French exchange. Advanced variation, you mean? He's got to be talking about the... Yes. I'm a mind reader. Alright, I don't know what to do, guys. I'm just going to put my rook on an open file. Yeah, we of course... We're just mentioning my guy Megami the other day. He's the one Iranian GM who I really have seen a lot of games from. And I like... Haven't seen his name in the chess news. But I'm not that up to date on tournaments and what's going on, so... He could be playing a lot, I wouldn't really know. We're in our own little... We live in our own little bubble here. We try to keep up with the major chess tournaments, but the smaller ones... Hard to do so. Black looks like he's equalized here. I don't really think I have an advantage. Space advantage is kind of pitiful. Exchanging bishops. This knight on f3 is just useless. Neil Skinner. I don't know how to get an edge here. I mean, I know that sometimes in these kind of Slav positions, I mean, if I take with the queen, he has all sorts of tactics, like knight takes e5 and d4. Honestly, my original plan was to take with the knight, use my pawns as like kind of shield, and try to maneuver behind the pawns with the knights and create some kingside threats. DST, yeah, everybody. It's old news now. Hu Yifan is playing in the Grand Prix, and that's probably over too. Well, I guess it's your right to resign a game whenever you want to. So you can't really punish people for resigning. I mean, I guess you could try, but DST likes to stir the controversy. But that's kind of an old story, old news. We need some new controversies. Yeah, Blue Crow's like, oh, come on, not this again. I feel the same way about it. Come on, we gotta find some new controversies. There's gotta be something. I didn't follow the end of, or is it over yet? The Grand Prix tournament in UAE. I missed the last several rounds. So this is a very strange position. I mean, according to classical strategic principles, what I just did, basically, knight c6, and I played knight e1. Why is this strange? Because this is theoretically black's bad bishop, quote-unquote bad bishop. The bishop that's the same color as the primary pawns in his pawn chain. And this is my quote-unquote good bishop on e2. So I'm actually going out of my way after knight c6 to exchange my good bishop for his bad bishop. And that's kind of going against classical principles, but I wanted to, first of all, eliminate this tactic, knight takes e5, and then, with the pawn structure the way it is here, fixed in the center, My knights are going nowhere. If you look at my knight on c3, my knight on f3, they don't have anywhere to maneuver. And now they go behind the pawn chain after knight takes e2, and they can head out over here and maybe get some kingside threats along with my bishop and queen going on. a5 is a kind of weird move. He's grabbing some space on the queen side. Kind of weird, but not entirely weird. You know, he might want to just grab some random space. Never hurts. There's also kind of an irritating move. If knight d3 for me, he has knight to b4. Good morning, y'all. Rizzing. There's only one round left today, according to Blue Crow. Who's in first place? So many theoretically drawn endgames rely on stalemate. Imagine if we changed the rules of chess. It would be a slightly different game. Oh man, this game is just really typical Mule Skinner. Exciting tactics everywhere you look. Knight to d3, knight b4. What should I play? Knight f4? Perhaps. Of course there's f4. That would block some of my play. I don't know what to do here. I really don't know what to do. Now maybe move my knight back to c3. Seems crazy. I'll just set myself up for more tactics. I guess it's just equal. And Viel and Grishuk on 5. So that's really close. There must be an awful lot of draws. Do you play against Andrew Tang? No, I don't play bullet chess. Just serious time controls. Knight to d3. Knight to d3 is the plan, and I want to connect my heavy pieces, but honestly I think black's, even though he has slightly less space, he's equal here. This a5 gives him a little bit of space. Mule Skinner also plays the French defense, so this is basically kind of like akin to the French defense. I have a bad bishop, but I guess my space advantage kind of compensates for it. Now knight to b6. Yeah, he's really playing this like a French. Threatening, quote unquote, threatening knight c4. I like to put my pawns on the correct color. Knight c5 maybe. Although my b2 pawn is protected. Everything's protected here. ATM. I'm going to try something kind of funky. We might have piece sacrifices on his pawn chain, like knight takes e6 at some point. And I was also thinking along the lines of some kind of direct kingside attacking ideas. I've used this in the a6 Slav. It's an idea. I've seen knight f4. Probably in the regular Slav too. Because I'm better 18, because a lot of lines rely on sound sacrifices later to work. How the hell would that bishop leave that chain in the French? Well, I'm not saying it is a French, I'm just saying it's like a French. Structure-wise, Mule Skinner plays the French. So he's comfortable with playing a pawn chain with all the pawns on white squares. It is a French, it's just similar pawn structure to the French. Bishop has been known to leave the pawn chain through d7 and b5, trading itself off there. Happens all the time, especially in the advanced variation. Bishop d7, queen b6, bishop b5. Maybe we can combine some kind of tactical ideas on the king side with a space advantage. Keep him bottled up. Knight b4. I thought he was going to play that last move, honestly. We want to sacrifice a pawn here. Does this even do anything? It looks fun anyway. Well, not all of White's pieces. The missing element is obviously a rook. If I had a rook lift, yep. If I had that, I'd really have a strong attack, but I don't see how I'm going to pull it off. Now, I may end up losing a tempo here. But he's going to end up with like a rook on a2 or some stupid rook knight. His knight's going to end up sitting on a2 out of play, grabbing a pawn while I have some threats. I don't really see what else to do. I mean, if I played a3 there, I'm putting all my pawns on the wrong color. It's passive. Trading on b4 opens the a file for him. So this looks best. This was the Wade defense, I think it's called. King h8. Okay, knight h5 now. Not that clear. Piece sacrifices. Nothing spectacular. Alright, I don't know what to do now. We have a little bit of space advantage, but I feel like black should be fine. Of course, he could make a mistake. Something under my mouse. You guys can see the mouse, right? Alright, it's basically a blitz game now. 1.5 plus 2. But how to get the rook in the game? F4, he can always kind of blockade with F5, maybe. Not so easy. Alright, he plays G6. Now he's getting positional again. Queen B5 is the idea. Controversial move, I don't know. I just had to make a move. Trading my bad bishop for his good bishop appealed to me as an interesting idea. Strategically. But the situation is pretty complicated. The game will more or less be decided by time rather than position. 15 minutes. I'm so glad that Jeroen's not here. 15 minutes of peace and quiet when I ban this guy. All right. Not too much here going on still. Strange that I would get trolls on a Monday morning. Guess they don't have school tomorrow. Rook C4. Uh-oh. Neil Skinner's pretty strong. I have no idea what his like over the board rating is. But he seems pretty good, to be honest. This looks equal. I think it's just silly to play this out for a win. Just to win on time. It's good for me. Draw. Good game. Deserved draw. I could probably find a way to flag him here, but let's move on and play another interesting game. Amir, Constant Change, World Loser, Zen Chess, Abaraba. Abul Fazl needs to change the challenge, and anyway, I think he might be provisional. Soltigo would like to moderate, but not on during the weekdays. This is a super rare occasion of pulling an all-nighter. All right, Amir, 15 plus 2. I think we played just once before. He played a very interesting idea in sacrificing a pawn against my English opening. So let's try Alekhine's defense. I find that this opening usually trips players up. He instantly played e5, so he's not surprised by this move. Let's check his ratings. 1700, lots of blitz, lots of classical, but no bullet. He's moving fast for a player who doesn't play bullet. All right. He knows the Alekhine's defense. Most people are kind of a little bit surprised usually. Saji, you're not rolling the dice today. Yeah. I decided to try it the other way this week, and then we'll decide which was better. So C takes D6. Yeah, last week I chose the challenges at random, but it was, I don't know, I thought it was kind of controversial. So we'll just take them in order this week, and then next week, if we continue this, we'll decide which was better. Abul Fazl. Yes, the point of today's stream is to play 15 plus 2. That's the theme of today's stream. Play 15 plus 2. Mindful. thinking. You might want to come by on Friday when I play just 5 plus 3. Knight f3. Oh, we'll play bishop e7 first. Yeah, check the title of the stream. Bishop d3 now. That's an unusual move. Because he's not resolving the pin on the knight. Bishop g4. Usually white always puts the bishop on e2 or stops bishop g4. You could play h3 to stop bishop g4 or meet bishop g4 with bishop e2, but it's unusual to see bishop d3. And I have the feeling Amir's playing too fast. We have this with a lot of our opponents in the 8 plus 3. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, I play 8 plus 3 or anything between 5-3 and 8-3. And I find that a lot of players play too fast. You know, again, there's no taking the time with you to the grave. So there's no extra points for like having extra time when you lose. I try to use all my time, but Amir's playing a little bit too fast here, I think. So let's go with knight c6, putting pressure on the d4 pawn. Yeah, knight f3, bishop d3's. Knight f3, bishop d3 is a little bit inaccurate. I have knight e5 here. And fortunately, a4 is covered from queen checks. So I can play knight e5. I mean, g4 is very weakening. Can't take on e5. Bishop e2 wastes time. I think this is definitely best. Can't sacrifice his queen. And white's position is maybe still viable, but there's something strange about combining knight f3 and bishop d3. One point of bishop d3 is usually go knight e2. Right. I mean, that's like if you're playing some lines of the French exchange variation, for example. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you play bishop d3 first, that would be different. Right. So here, if we go back here to move 6, yeah, he can play bishop d3 with the idea of knight e2. In fact, that's what's typically played like in an e takes f Caro-Kann. And here it might be quite good too. My opponent proposes a take back. Dropped a piece. All right. Every stream I will grant at least one take back. So that's fine with me. That's our take back for the day. You guys owe me a take back. But Amir, playing too fast, man. Just relax and take your time. Now we can smash his pawns. Maybe the lesser of the evils was for him to play G. No, he should have just played bishop e2. It loses a pawn, but maybe that's not true. Yeah, if you played here, not knight a3, but bishop e2, you have to calculate bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, knight takes f3, check, queen takes f3, knight takes c4, and white has queen g4. Forking g7 and c4. Maybe winning his pawn back. If you make a mistake, you know, it's a good quality to be able to admit your mistake and like move the piece back. Because we all make mistakes. Right, Pukro. Bishop d3 idea, knight e2 and f3. So now I have to think about this position strategically. Also in terms of like my king's safety. But I think just taking on f3 with the knight, castling kingside. The bishop on h5 is a very strong piece. I could consider castling queenside though. It's a little more aggressive. Queen d7. But I'm not sure what my follow-up is. I mean, queen d7. He plays king h2. And I don't really have where to go from there, you know. Nothing special. I think it's better just to castle kingside. I've got play along the e-file, bishop f6, bishop g5. Maybe queen d7 later. This is a tough call now. Play like g6. g6, bishop h6, rook e8. And g6 weakens my king side and gives his bishop a good square to go to. I could even take on f3 here. Give him my h7 pawn. I could even just flat out sacrifice h7. Pretty much a number of ways. Bishop f6, bishop takes h7, king h8. Just ask white what he's doing. He'd have to lose a tempo with bishop retreats. Alright, I don't know. At this point, white's bishop is hanging. Pawn is hanging on f3. Obviously, our structure is clearly better. h6 I didn't really consider. You could also sack the exchange. Bishop takes f3. Take, bishop takes. We have a monster bishop pair. But it doesn't seem really necessary. I don't like to sacrifice material just for the sake of sacrificing material. I mean, if I can win without risk, I think that's the better way of doing things. Speaking of f5, he wants to play f5 himself. It looks like. My knight is bad on b6, by the way. This guy should get back in the game. Dvoretsky taught me the principle of the worst piece. Yeah, that's... Amir needs to take more time. You're not playing like it's 15-2 game. You're playing like it's a bullet game. Principle of the worst piece. My knight was bad on b6. So we're going to improve it. All our pieces are working now. The last piece to enter the game will be the rook on a8. Probably the easiest way to win a chess game. You know, mobilize all your pieces when the opponents are not fully mobilized. And now we've got a tactic to win the exchange. White has no counterplay. It should be pretty clear. The lurking bishop on h5. So my advice to Amir is to take more time. He's not a bullet player, which is good. But he's probably playing fast blitz, 3-0, a lot of 3-0 type of time controls, very likely. Which is not necessarily bad, but need to spend more time with longer time controls, trying to play the best move in every position. Queen f5, then bishop takes f3, wins a pawn. And that knight on a3 is... The knight on a3 is seriously ill, but he can get in the game pretty quickly. Knight b5, knight c2. Of course, if I play queen f5, it's going to be difficult for that piece to move. And meanwhile, we'll penetrate along the e-file, so I think this is just a winning position for black. Too many weaknesses in white's position. No realistic attacking chances. I can play a6 if I want to. Maybe just rook e7. No way for him to attack my back rank. Played b4. b4. I ought to be able to like win a piece around here somehow. It seems like. Like you could play a tactic, bishop takes h4, just for the sake of playing a tactic, but you know, I don't really want to trade off. Bishop takes h4, queen takes h4, queen d3 check, king g2, queen takes a3, queen f6, and black resigns. This piece I need to guard my king side. Anyway, guys, we'll wrap this up. I'll try to wrap this up quickly. Not that easy, though. I was thinking about trapping his bishop. Maybe not a stupid idea. Queen h5, queen e2 check. Well, that's one way to stop queen h5. f6. It's actually surprisingly difficult to trap his bishop. Queen d3 check, queen h3 check. And f6. This wins a piece. I guess that's good enough. I was going to try to trap his bishop, but we'll just take the knight instead. Okay, he has some sort of vague threats against my king, but it's realistically not too much. Alright guys, Amir just playing too fast for this time control. Amir, you should play on Fridays. We play Blitz. Could have won the rook. How could I win a rook? I don't see how I can win the rook. I mean, his rook was protected by the knight on a3. It's going to be hard to pull off. I mean, I play f6, my bishop is buried forever. We'll just crawl out here with like h6. Make sure I have a flight square for my king, and that should wrap it up. Yeah, piece up, rook up, 11 minutes with increment. That's pretty much. We'll put the pawn on f3. Maybe it's a little overextended there. Then never mind. Then we won't. Maybe later. This is looking gruesome. Alright guys, we have 2 hours left, so we should be able to play at least 5 more games. 4 more minimum. Maybe we'll squeeze in 5. Okay, Amir. A little too fast, man. You need to take your time. Constant Change, World Loser, Abaraba, Liberian. Those guys are definitely going to play. You know, we'll try to get 5 games if we can. It's hard to win the rook when it's protected by the knight on a3. That knight was bad. Okay, Constant Change is another player who plays too fast. He is pretty strong, though. But I have cautioned him to take his time. Hopefully he's working on it. English, I don't know what they call it, like the classical variation of the English. I don't think it really has a name, right? When black plays e5. Reverse Sicilian. Some people refer to it as reverse Sicilian. Amir actually played e4 against me. An interesting new pawn sacrifice. So lately, sorry for the musical coffee cups. Lately, Constant Change been playing this old Indian defense a lot. It's really gets on my nerves, though. Just every game seems like a really closed position. Can't get any open games against anybody. Makes me crazy. All right. Try for something different. We'll just play g3. Usually I'm playing d4 against Constant Change and trying to turn it into a King's Indian, but it becomes an old Indian. But I don't think this is a great, you know, defense against the English, really. So we'll just keep it in English opening territory. So we have reserved the right to play d4 in one go, which could be useful depending on what he does. So here I have c5, and if e4, pawn takes d6, pawn takes f3, pawn takes e7, right. So this should be good. I think we've had this before. Basically, I'm trading a wing pawn for a center pawn with this move, which I feel like should be to white's advantage. There was an IM 2 pawns up against a non-IM. Everyone saw how the non-title player should resign, and the end of the game was a draw. So resigning is silly. For every example like that, DST, there were like 100 non-IMs who didn't resign and like lost their next game because they were so tired from playing, you know, the extra 40 moves that they shouldn't have played. I mean, you can definitely find examples, but I think there's also a question of wasting energy. And if it's like a tournament situation, in a tournament where it's like 2 rounds a day, there's something to be said for resigning if it's going to be a situation where you can conserve the time and maybe save energy for your next game. I've seen a lot of people do that, actually. You know, so I think practical considerations are important too. If you've got another game to play and you're like down pretty heavily against someone, consider resigning and saving your energy for the next game. But I mean, you're right to a certain degree. You know, a lot of people resign prematurely. So it's like everything else, it's relative. It's very difficult to decide when exactly you should give up hope. But be practical. That would be my advice. RCGG, refresh your stream. Yeah. Hey stream, how are the games going? So far, not too much. Against constant change, I played c5. We're trading a wing pawn for center pawn, leading to a situation where we have, you know, kind of potential to destroy black's center. You know, if I can play d4, black will have no center remaining. I can play d4 here. But I'm just thinking about more than that. Where do I want to set up my pieces? And maybe to play something slower. Black setup, it basically looks like a Coley system. But I kind of like my position. I mean, d4. Where's my bishop going? I think that's the biggest question we have here for white, is, as is typical, this piece. As you get beyond beginning level, you know, you start to think about the position in terms of pieces, squares, not just holding on to your material. Plans of all the pieces. Where am I going with this piece? You know, there's no bishop g5. This is never going to be a good square with him overprotecting the pin on f6. There are several approaches. I could play something quiet like d3. So I don't really fear him playing e4 here. He doesn't have enough control of the center to play that move. Black could play c5. Turning it into, well, effectively what looks like kind of bad Marazzi. I don't think we fear the bad Marazzi too much either. d3, c5. White has a lot of moves. But I guess d4 is our main continuation. I'm just not sure how I'm going to follow it up. If I play d4, black makes some kind of developing move without releasing the tension. Or he even takes on d4 and I take back and he plays something like knight e5. I'm not sure that I've really, you know, benefited that much. So I'm just going to put this bishop on an active diagonal, on a long diagonal, and we'll decide what to do in the center later on. Gagdad. Good idea. What's wrong with putting the dark square bishop on the long diagonal? Well, Gagdad, as I mentioned, we do have to consider, you know, whether or not he can play c5. Is that a good move? You know, stopping me from playing d4. And in the end, I decided these pieces aren't really well. His pieces aren't really well set up, you know, for the idea of c5. So at the end of the day, I said, okay, you're right, Gagdad. Maybe it's best to put the bishop on the long diagonal. But as Grandmaster Mihai Suba says in his great book, Dynamic Chess Strategy, I mean, many times in these English type positions, people just automatically put their bishops on the long diagonal, but it's not always the best strategy. Like in the King's Indian fianchetto variations, for example, the bishop on b2 usually isn't really great. Shuba brings, you know, that point directly in his book. For example, in the King's Indian fianchetto, the bishop's actually better on e3 than it is on b2. So it really depends on the situation. And many of the lines of the English, the reverse Sicilian. Alright, now I'm committed to putting my bishop on the long diagonal here. But the follow-up is the key. What are we going to do? I think something like queen c2 and bring a rook to d1. Queen c2, rook d1, followed by d4. Then our d4 would be much more effective. If we're better developed. Some questions to be asked here. I don't want to give anything away in this long time control games. DST says d4 seems reeking the center as the e file will become open. Reeking? Like wreaking havoc? Is that a word? How do you spell wreaking havoc anyway? That's a word, wreaking? Wow. What does that mean exactly? H6, it looks weakening and a little bit slow. But it stops knight g5, so he's kind of preparing himself for what looks like e4. Maybe I have to play d3 to stop it. I wanted to play queen c2 now. We can calculate queen c2, e4, knight h4, or knight h4 looks bad there actually. I mean e4, knight e1 maybe. e4, knight e1, and then d3, crack the center. Like the lobster shell that it is. Not so easy. You can play d4, but then e4. That's a whole nother ball game. d4, e4. Then maybe knight h4. I've got no pressure on e4. d3 is the default move. Can I find better? You know, that's how I think about it. I see a move that's okay in d3. If I can find better. It's a little slow, the d3. Queen c2, e4. I mean, his pawn looks really overextended, this pawn. Coming to e4. It looks extremely overextended. But it's like he can defend it with some sort of tightrope act. Like knight c5 ultimately is enough to defend it, unfortunately. Alright, well, enough time. Enough time to waste here. White should be slightly better. He has like a 3.5 time advantage. What book do you recommend for endgame? I'm not a really strong player, but I'm not a beginner. Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of people recommend Dvoretsky's Endgame. What is it called? Endgame Manual? Or what is the name of the Dvoretsky Endgame book? I don't know if that's too advanced, though. Does anybody here have that book? Because I've heard some good things about it, but I'm not sure how advanced the level is. I studied Practical Endgames by Kiris. It's a very classic book. E4 only move for me. E4. For white to play e4? It's controversial. A controversial move. I play knight b6. I love this guy. He's actually not that bad because he can go toward the center at d5. Of course, that's going to cost black another move. I mean, this is going to boil down to me probably playing more or less like a hedgehog. Type of position. I don't want him exchanging pieces with queen e7 and bishop a3. So I might choose to play but knight b6 is a surprisingly reasonable move. So the e4 idea might not be that bad. But now I don't like it as much as maybe last move it was a little more reasonable. I'm not sure. I guess we'll just play hedgehog style here. But I think we could have done better. Maybe it would have been better to just play d4 straight away. What's the plan here? Position looks so even and deadlocked in a way. Well, I mean, okay, you're playing the English opening or something to that effect. I mean, you're playing a hypermodern kind of setup, almost like you're black. You're not going to get as big an advantage or target as big an advantage as you might, like playing e4 or even d4. I think that white is hoping to get kind of a small initiative. But I think that structurally white is better. I mean, you've got to think about the position in terms of structure. This is a structure where I have this dragon type of formation. Theoretically, this pawn chain is very strong for white, so I have the better half of the pawn structure here. But we're a long way from the end game. Just that it's hard for him to break my structure. He can play e4 maybe. His only pawn break, effectively e4. Hard to organize it. I was looking at knight e4 as an idea. But it's rough to find a solid continuation. I mean, yeah, of course, like knight e4 is something that happens in the Sicilian sometimes. You might be able to play this. Yeah, my knight isn't really ideally placed on c3. We have a hedgehog type of position now, where the knight is actually getting in the way of the bishop on b2. This happens a lot, many openings. Most commonly when I'm black in like hedgehog or defenses to queen pawn games like the London, where you're playing like knight c6 and then you fianchetto behind it and then you have to reposition the knight, so like knight b1, knight d2. I think that Irush is on that track, you know, thinking about how his knight isn't well placed, and that's not a silly idea. I mean, to play something like knight e4, the doubled pawns maybe control the center to some extent. But knight b1 back to b1 to d2. You know, if we have time to set up an improved hedgehog. But I was kind of surprised by knight b6, and I hadn't anticipated it, honestly. You know, I mean, I like my position here, but I think I played too hesitantly. I wanted to make d4 work, but I don't think that white has that big an advantage, I guess, at the end of the day. A little advantage. Maybe. Wanted to make d4 work, I just didn't see. E takes d4, and then knight e5 or something. Maybe I should just go with it. The d4 right away. Black's spending a lot of time uncharacteristically here. But I think he's equalized, close to equal. Bishop f5, maybe just developing a piece. Knight b d5. looks okay. Someone was even talking about bishop f8. I don't know, if you want to do that yet, maybe later. a5, grabbing some space on the queen side, definitely looks like a normal move. Talking about pawn structure again, I think that white should think about this minority attack with b4, b5. It's typical in the English. It's hard to formulate a plan for white. I don't think that there really is that clear of a plan. I think we have to kind of respond to what black's doing, and adjust our plan accordingly. But you have faith in the pawn structure being slightly better for white, I guess. The knight on d5, okay. That knight can be removed by playing e4. So I think it's not a crazy idea to play knight b1 here. This is not a crazy idea, to play knight b1 and keep the pieces on the board. But I'm a little concerned he can play e4. Knight b1, e4. It looks like black's pretty active there. And as long as he maintains control of e4, knight b1, e4 takes, knight takes e4. It's just hard to shake him loose, I would think. We do open up the long diagonal. I'm not worse there. Does seem kind of slow, though. I don't really want to take, for sure. I rush this idea of knight here. Alright. This is equal. Constant change. h6 turned out to be a very useful move. I just couldn't bring myself to play knight b1 in this position. I don't want to take. Although, the problem with taking on d5 is that he can take back with the pawn. And the other way is possible too, but that looks really insipid to me. Fixing his pawn structure in a sense. I just don't think that I have any realistic advantage anymore. This is not such a crazy move, but knight b1, but e4. Then I have to take, knight takes e4. I was looking at queen d4. The long diagonal. Black can even play bishop f8 there. Probably be okay. Constant change taking his time today. Kazan Better says knight takes d5, c takes d5, d4, e4, knight e5 looks like a good transaction for white. Well, it's nice to analyze forcing variations, Kazan Better. I think you're on the right track in that sense. But I don't think so. Black gets the better half of that deal. My bishop on b2 is dead, and black has a space advantage in the center. It's, best case scenario, white's like on the worst half of a closed position. Now, I don't know if it really matters like which way I recapture here. I guess the queen takes is more flexible. It'd be nice to play bishop takes c3, queen b2, but I don't think he's going to give me that. But I guess we could consider bishop takes and bishop d2. Looks sort of stupid. Anyway, this stops e4, knight takes e4. Position is approximately equal. He quickly played knight to d5. And now, he could drift into a slightly worse position, hopefully. I mean, top grandmasters win positions like this all the time. I still prefer white. The basic pawn structure hasn't changed. We have the potential for a minority attack on the queen side, though difficult to achieve. But more importantly, we have a central pawn majority, that I think gives white a little pull. If he's not careful, we end up with the stronger central pawn. Play e4 and then d4, and then I have a strong central pawn and he doesn't. So that's the threat here. e4, d4. Bishop g4 is an active move. e4, knight f6. Nah, let's see. I sounded like a goat just then. e4, knight f6 or knight c7. Yeah, I mean, he's like playing bishop g4 to help to exchange on f3 and get better control of the dark squares like d4 sometimes. I think h3 just weakens my king side. So I'm not really sure what to do. We could maneuver. Think about the queenside minority attack, excuse me. Rook e1. Get this piece sort of half in play. Rook e1. The problem is this one doesn't really want to go to d1. Rook c8 now. Kind of Slav defense type of move. e4, knight moves, d4. Bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3. Takes d4. I really don't know what else to do. How about h3? Does that just weaken my king side for no good reason? Probably. I also have knight to d2. Seems like rook c8 plays well against that. I mean, I don't want to make it a situation where this rook on c8 is good. I didn't expect him to take right away, but why not? Now his rook looks a little sketchy. Bishop g4. e4 takes, bishop takes d4, bishop takes g3. We lose a pawn. We have to play this while the playing is good. It's a Sveshnikov, guys. Playing the reverse of a Sveshnikov here. Objectively, black is okay. I need to get in d4, but how? Bishop takes d4, bishop takes g3. I just don't have anything here. f4. I'd rather have my king on a white square. Queen g5 looks slightly weird. Throwing the queen outside the pawn chain. Also, he's setting himself up for like f4. Queen e2, I don't know if that was a good square for me. Alright. Now his white squares seem to be a little bit sketchy. We've got typical King's Indian attack. sort of situation. We need to play this right away, maybe. Or he has time to play bishop c5 or something like that. Not a lot of time. I thought it was a tiny bit better. a4 may be a mistake. No, a4 weakens my dark squares. It's not something I really absolutely had to do. Although eventually he could probably force me. I'd rather have played b4. Okay. It's going to be hard to break down this blockade. I mean, f4 would be a move I'd like to play, but the circumstances have to be right for my king to be safe. That's my only break, basically. I'm not sure I can even do anything. If I could get it in, maybe f4 and e5. And then here I was hoping to play rook c4. I mean, there might be a situation where I can sack the exchange. It's looking kind of unrealistic. I think we'll change plans back to f4 idea on the king side. Originally I was going to play rook c4, but then I started getting nervous that my rook was going to get trapped. After something like bishop c3 followed by a6 and f4 ideas, kingside space maybe. Maybe the other rook was meant to go to c1. We're just like minuscule advantage for white. I think white is like microscopically better here. 0.1 at the most. The computer should say something like 0.1 advantage. Though realistically it may be 0. He's using a lot of time. He lost on time. Wow, that's bizarre. You know, I'm seeing white is 0.1 better. Let's see what the computer says here. Pretty accurate. It's up to 0.3. It might go down though. It needs. Plus, now it's on 0.1. Yeah. Plus, I'm not using Google Chrome. The engine analysis runs better on Google Chrome, but it's 0.1, guys. Am I good or what? I'm just going to turn it off before it changes its mind. Yeah, 0.1. I'm excellent, like a human computer. All right, World Loser is challenging the 15+2. Guys, we have an hour and a half left, so that's basically at least 3 games. Did I have f4 at some moment? You guys think I had f4? Gross Sveshnikov? Yeah, World Loser, I've got a good score against him. I'll be happy with a draw, basically, because he either beats me or it's a draw. Were these simul games? I think they were simul. One was a simul game. 1 or 2 were simul games. But still, I mean, not too many people have a plus score among the viewership here. Alright, knight f6. Play a bit more sharp now. I just play how I play. But it's not just me. I mean, most people aren't giving me a chance to play sharp. How do you play sharp against the old Indian defense, you know? I could play e4 when I was white next game. That's fair enough. But it's still... difficult to play sharp against the Wade defense or whatever it was. I played c4 in the Wade defense game, so we'll try to play an e4 before the day's out, but that doesn't guarantee I can get a sharp position. I played the Alekhines defense in one game. That's pretty sharp. Okay, world loser. We're gonna be careful here. This guy, I've not beaten him. Play the King's Indian defense. Well, I'm kind of scared of this opponent, you know. He's sort of difficult, so against the stronger players I'd like to play Nimzo, Queen's Indian, Bogo. I could play King's Indian, but it's too late now. I like the Nimzo. Queen b3. This is a very rare move. So I guess black has a bunch of defenses. c5. Could transpose to a queen c2. Knight c6. I don't really have a set response to queen b3 though. I guess c5 transposes to, well, this sometimes transposes to lines in the classical. Once I lost with white a really bad game in the classical, I remember. Now a3, huh? What's up with a3? Oh, I could see like queen a5, bishop d2, c takes d, queen takes b4, queen takes b4, a takes b4, c takes b with slight advantage to white. I mean, bishop takes c3 is probably main move. Bishop takes c3. Well, this has got to be like a main line. Actually, kind of rare main line of the Nimzo classical. There's something weird about this position, actually. Yeah, it's not a main line, because if he takes with the queen, I have knight e4 and queen a5 check. So maybe a3 is a mistake, I don't know. It still seems very reasonable for white, though, to play it this way. Take, knight c6, knight e4. I should play for blockade against the doubled pawns, right? White's played a3. It's basically a Samish where he's played a3, queen b3. Queen b3 in the Samish, or Zamish, shouldn't really be, certainly shouldn't be bad for black. Knight c6. Maybe we do like a typical kind of setup. Knight c6, b6, bishop a6, right? We've got a tempo on the queen. This should be pretty good. So after c5, I remember I played this once with white. I don't know what I was thinking. Oh, he has to take on c5, of course. It's just so long since I've played this position that I can't remember. Takes on c5, knight a6, then that's how my game with Charles Herton went. It was like d takes c5, knight a6, a3, bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, knight takes c5, transposing to a classical Nimzo. So it's unusual to play a3. He's basically playing a Samish with the queen on b3, which could in fact like lose a rather important tempo for white. The line with the queen goes to c2. Yeah, this isn't the same. Black should be good here. Classic blockade strategy against the doubled pawns. We're going to gain a tempo on the queen with knight a5 at some point. So What would Nimzowitsch do? Castling, d6, bishop a6. His setup is a little bit slow. So I wonder... There is a famous game where Nimzowitsch played something like d6, queen d7 in a similar position to this. Looks like a good idea here. Playing for blockade. We can play, like sometimes in the French defense, queen d7, played queen a4. That's my idea, queen d7. I mean, obviously I could play bishop d7, but that's not where I want my bishop. I want my bishop on a6. So this is the point. Yeah, it's the only move he should take on c5. I mean, I know that transposes to mainline queen c2 if I play knight a6. There may be other continuations for black after d takes c5, and there may be other continuations in general for black besides c5 against queen b3. In fact, I'm sure there are. Knight a5 here. Making Freudian comments again. What about the knight, going to e4? I don't want to lose too much time. In any case, I mean, this has got to be a good move. Or not. Allowing like knight e5 type of tricks. What am I talking about? Actually, there's some funny lines here. Let's play knight a5. Yesterday, my simul had a lot of games with knights against bishops for some reason. All right, now bishop b7. Obviously, I can trade queens. But I don't really want to fix his pawns necessarily. So it's probably best to develop a piece instead. I do have a trick in mind. If he plays d takes c5. It's not forced, but I could play queen takes queen and knight b3. Yeah. He's also playing very fast. Now bishop c6, it looks like we have some ideas for white. So interesting is bishop e4. Trading the white square bishop. It's probably not a bad move. If I play bishop c6, he plays queen b1. Of course, black has a lot of different moves here. A little concerned about how fast he's playing. He already has a 2-minute, 3-minute time advantage. I don't think he's played well, but he is playing very fast. His position looks good for black. Bishop e4, trading into that ending bishop takes e4, knight takes e4. So my knight could get hit by queen b1, winning a pawn there. Maybe I just focus on controlling the e4 square. Yeah, this seems like a reasonable move. This could also indirectly undermine this c4 pawn. Something like rook c8. I'd like to play with, he's instantly played bishop e2. Well, that's fine. Enhanced control of e4. Queen takes queen, followed by knight to d5. Queen takes queen, pawn takes knight b3, rook a2, knight d5. Doesn't look like enough. Of course, I have bishop c6 now. Better control of e4 now that I've driven him out of there. I just don't know if I should trade queens on b5 and fix his pawns. World Losers ratings, 1900 in Bullet, 2100 in Classical, 2000 in Blitz. This seems like a good position for black. I don't know. I shouldn't be worried about it, really. Bishop c6, just keeping the queens on. All right. I'm not sure. We have a very good control of the position. I could repeat position with bishop e4. Depending on where he goes. I mean, he could go queen b2. It's not a great square for the queen. He could play queen a6 for all I know. Doesn't look like a normal thing to do, but black is better, just that I'm a little bit low on time. Bishop takes f3 is a bad move. I wouldn't say it's a bad move. Well, I mean, now that his bishop can recapture, it's probably not great. If you meant earlier, no, it's not a bad move. You could play that way, but I don't think it's necessarily best. Queen b2. Queen b2 seems kind of bizarre. I'm basically aiming for bishop and knight versus, or two knights against bishop and knight, something like that. I'm not sure what World Loser is really doing. Bishop a4. Looks pretty nasty, actually. Changing directions. I think we're going to target the c-pawn here. It's not that easy to pick it off. Strategically, this is a big problem. The bishop on c1. I think he's playing too fast, which is pretty typical here. Not too many players are used to playing this time control. So rook c8. Knight e4 is also interesting. Rook e1 doesn't leave him with any good square for his knight, you know, other than that. So I guess knight e4. A very good Nimzovician sort of position now. It's very possible I missed some sort of simple tactic. I'm thinking about the position more in strategic terms. Rook c8 at some point, obviously, but I wanted to stop knight d2, or at least, you know, be able to trade it off. Position's a lot more clear after that. I mean, ultimately the c-pawn should fall here. He doesn't have the classical kind of counterplay you see in a lot of lines. In the Zamish, where white gets a big king side attack as compensation for the double isolated pawns. Well, they're not isolated, double pawns. The blockaded double pawns. They'll be double isolated if he chooses to trade on c5, which I don't think he is going to do. They will be no more shortly. Now e4. Well, I don't want to take on d4 and open up his bishop on d2. No, unless I'm prepared to move the knight to a good square. Though now I could do it. But anyway, I've been talking about this for ages. Time to get the rook off of a8. We're basically a clear pawn up. Good winning chances. He's got 4 minutes more than me. Very competitive player. Now I was thinking take. I'm not sure it's best though. It makes sense though. He can't afford to take with the bishop and ruin his pawn structure further. I mean, he's welcome to if he wants to, but now we've got very, very good control of the position here. I think I want to free my c4 square. Free the c4 square. Actually, queen b5. I've got to be careful about my d6 pawn. Maybe I should play d5. Looks like a good French. Because I didn't like this pawn getting weak, actually. And now bishop d3. Guarding my king side a little bit. Maybe I should play... I don't know. It's hard to avoid exchanging pieces when I'm down so far on time here. I don't like being down 5 minutes on the clock. World Loser, I think playing too fast for the purpose of the stream, but practically speaking, he has some chances due to the time pressure. Look at this h4 move played. Hyper aggressive. How is he so fast? Bullet 1900. He's played more bullet games than anything else. No, Blitz 3000. There's Queen B4 ideas. For some reason I can never trade queens. He's managed to avoid trading queens in any possible variations. I'm gonna need to make place for my king here. Not a lot of time to commentate, guys. Sorry about that, but he's just playing too fast. I could have just taken the pawn on d4. That might have been best. But he still doesn't have really a good way to protect it. So maybe it doesn't matter. We wait for him to play bishop d1. I have a hiding place for my king. This is like a perverse tactic or something. What's going on? Bishop c2. Then I'm sneaking the pawn. Queen c2. This is really tough. Right. Managed to trade queens, but he's 5 minutes ahead of me on the clock here. Just 5 minutes ahead. To reorganize. Need to bring my king in the game. How is he 5 minutes ahead on the clock? Damn, maybe... Well, I couldn't play b5. Knight c4 is like a draw. Now this move. Keeping him tied down to d4. This is very like one of my simul games from yesterday. Play bishop a4 now. We can advance on the queen side. This play is like perfect. How does he play so perfect so quickly? Like he were like 2300 or something. It's kind of a little unbelievable. All right, take bishop b3, bishop c4 maybe. No, then I have no time for bishop b3. It's possible this is just a draw. Too much counterplay for white. Good king. Constant threats of opposite color bishops. It's probably not even a win for black. And we can try. We have to try, but not convinced about this. Bishop there. Bring my king in the game. This will be like the 6th game where I had no chance of beating this guy. Actually, I had a chance, but he's just too fast. My expected score against him in 6 games is something like 4.5, 5. But this opposite color bishop endgame actually looks pretty interesting. It may be winning for black. I think it's probably winning. Threatening king c4. Could be the first time I ever beat him. It's going to be close. Very technical. This is best defense. If I take on g5, is that better? Or taking on h5? Taking on h5, I think. He's not only strong, but he's incredibly fast. Now here I have a second passed pawn now. We should be winning for black. This h5 pawn. Yesterday in my simul I had a decoy, an endgame opposite color bishops where I drew down 2 pawns, but in a similar situation the guy missed a pretty amazing win. And I think white played a little too fast in this game. If I were to take on g5, I don't know if I'd be winning. But this looks winning. I mean, how is he going to stop both pawns and keep his d4 pawn protected? There's like three weaknesses, essentially. You're putting your money on conversion. Like currency exchange. He offered a draw. I think he meant to resign. All right, we finally beat him. It took 6 games, and this opposite color bishop ending. I was a little bit afraid he had f5 at some moment here, like bishop takes h5, f5. But I guess I was winning all the way. If we look at the computer engine, this is clearly winning at the end. It was a little bit less here, but I guess it was always winning. Here he had f5 maybe. In this moment, f5. f4 mistake. Why does the computer say that? King b5. Oh, he's supposed to play what? g5 here. Okay, I don't know. This engine doesn't have enough time to really calculate this position. All right, Baraba. And plus, we'd rather have it on Google Chrome. Close, though. Maybe there's some study like draw for white. I don't know. It looks very, very difficult. Maybe there is a draw, though. I'm certainly open to that possibility. Baraba, we wanted a King's Indian, right? You guys wanted me to play the King's Indian. I'm going to play e4 next game on white. So we have time for at least 2 more games. If we get down to the end of the stream, guys, and there's like 10 minutes left or 15 minutes left, you know, I'll take maybe some blitz challenge or something. c4, g6. Really hot in here. Strange. February, it's hot in here. Should open the window. I'm going to open the window for a minute. Alright, a little fresh air never hurt anybody. A little oxygen to the brain. Bishop g7. I like hippos, DST. My favorite animal. What's up? Alright. d6. It's not my turn. Come on. Baraba. Let's play an interesting King's Indian. Oh, Bishop g5. This is a very rare move. I've experimented with this move myself, but I'm unconvinced. You know, I mean, I could play knight e4. I wonder about knight e4 here. I mean, it might be a good move. It's like an improved vulture. Seems like it should be a good move. The improved vulture. And you guys know the vulture? Like Stefan Bucher. d4, sort of knight f6, c4, c5, d5, knight e4. It's a really bad opening. It's hard to believe it's even quantifiable as an opening. Alright. So when I'm white, I like to play variations of bishop g5, but after knight c3, and then either d6 or castles bishop g5 is the so-called Smyslov system. It's also, for white, it's possible to play something like knight c3, bishop f4, kind of like a London system sort of setup with the pawn on c4. But when I've experimented with bishop g5, my fear with white has always been, you know, black can play knight e4. And whereas that is kind of controversial, like against the Trompowsky, I think here it's a concretely useful move for black. So c5 looks pretty much forced. If I'm gonna make this work, I have to play c5. Try to use the long diagonal. Use the ability to play maybe queen a5, queen b6. Just as in like d4, knight f6, bishop g5, knight e4, Trompowsky. Same ideas, but here I think it's more justified. Whereas, excuse me guys, if you play against the Trompowsky with immediately like 2 knight e4, I think in a sense you're kind of playing into white's hands, because white will no doubt like gain that tempo back in all the main lines of the Trompowsky, kicking your knight with f3, trading it off after you wasted several tempos on moving it. So a lot of people, you know, at one time or another were very excited by playing knight e4 against the Trompowsky, but I think that time will show that it's probably not black's best move. Okay, so knight c3, and then life starts to get interesting. You know, we could transpose to some sort of Grunfeld. I don't play the Grunfeld anymore. Did when I was about 1900. But no, at some point, taking on c3, I'm going to just simply get a Grunfeld to tempo up. I would think. Well, no, it's not a tempo up, because this actually happens in some of those lines, right? Knight e4, bishop f4, or knight e4, bishop h4. So I'm just going to transpose cleanly to one of those lines in the Grunfeld, actually. No, I think knight c3 is a reasonable move. Queen a5. Queen a5 is thematic. And then what does white do? I don't know, we'll find out. There's only one way to find out. Although this move is played sometimes in the Grunfeld. Greenfeld. Some people call it Greenfeld. I guess the truth is that it's something in between. And then Trompowsky, knight e4 black is the main line, so it can't be bad. I don't know, Monkey D. Bill. Like, is that a fact? Are you sure? I would think the line would be a little more blurred. There's an awful lot of moves for black against Trompowsky that are all popular. Knight e4, d5, c5, e6, even g6. Maybe at some point knight e4 was considered the main line. I think in the mid-90s it probably was considered the main line, but I'm not sure that's the case anymore. I mean, maybe it is in like the Trompowsky books. For the side from the white perspective, I guess knight e4 is considered the main line. From my perspective, it's not. I guess only from the perspective of believers in the move of knight e4, consider it to be main line. Because there's no official answer to that kind of question. Like names of openings are the master database. The main move is definitely knight e4. The computer evaluates equal. I mean, I'm not sure that the computer favors knight e4, and it would probably depend on the engine. But I'll look into that. No, I think knight e4 is no longer the most popular move. I can say that with pretty much certainty. Okay, Baraba, you're spending too much time on this move. You're getting worse than me. He's not even commentating. He's spending like 3 minutes on this move. So queen d3. Now d5. We have all sorts of moves here, actually. D takes c, right? Oh, d takes c looks pretty good. Well, they'll bring his knight to d4. What about knight c6? Hey, maybe that's the right move. Knight c6. This is getting kind of complicated. Knight c6, queen takes e4. C takes d. Knight takes d4, knight takes d4. Wow, that's a bizarre position. What if I just take on c3? Then he's going to play bishop d2. That's the thing about queen d3. He can do these kind of weird knight takes c3, bishop d2 ideas. Protect his... Save his ass, basically. d5? The only good thing about d5, it protects my knight for a moment. Well, it also opens up bishop f5, so there's two good things about it. Okay, d5, pawn takes d5, then what's my idea? I don't really see anything. If I play d5, cd, he's threatening queen b5 check. Tough call. I think queen d3 is a really, really good move. You guess you could play also queen c2. It wouldn't protect d4. No, this is probably much better than queen c2. Yeah, of course, it guards d4. D takes c, knight takes d4, knight c5. And then I could play like knight c6. Knight c6 immediately, queen takes e4, pawn takes c3. Knight takes d4. What's going on there? It's pretty complicated. Oh no. Knight takes c3, bishop d2. I mean, he can also just recapture on c3, but I was just calculating bishop d2 and not sure what I'm doing there. I don't know, guys. Knight c6, queen takes e4, cd, knight takes d4, and then maybe bishop takes d4. Whatever I do, he always has bishop d2 back. Or knight takes d4, bishop d2 back isn't necessary there. He can just develop and gain a tempo with something like e3. White is okay. Tough one. I don't know. I guess I could play f5. I wasn't really considering it, but it should be considered. Ye old f5. That should actually be like pretty obvious try. I'm just not used to playing the Dutch. It also weakens the e5 square a little bit. It feels like after f5, the e5 square's kind of soft. He could play bishop e5, for example. f5, bishop e5. That's really awkward for black. I don't like it. I'm going to waste maximum 1 more minute on this position. I don't know, guys. Knight c6. I'm not convinced by. I was thinking, is there some way to sacrifice a piece? Knight c6, queen takes e4, some crazy move. No. Have to take on d4. He takes back. Okay, I take back with the knight, I guess. And then he has all sorts of moves. Take back with the bishop. He plays bishop d2. Strange position, where white seems to have a tiny advantage. Knight takes c3, bishop d2. That's also decent for white. The other line that I haven't really talked about too much is c takes d, knight takes d4, knight c5. Or c takes d5, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight takes c3, again, bishop d2. C takes, knight c5. I just feel like I'm bringing his knight into the game via d4. cd4, knight takes d4, knight c5. And then maybe... Alright, whatever. I'm just going to play this. I have to make a move at some point. You just have to choose randomly. Kind of randomly. Alright, I don't know. Which is better? This looks more complex than knight c6. So, I mean, queen takes e4, pawn takes c3 is just good for me. So he's got to play knight takes d4. And then here I can even play knight c6. That would transpose to the other variation after. Knight c6, queen takes e4, knight takes d4. Knight c5. I mean, knight c5 looks like the most complicated, but I'm not sure it's the best. I'm kind of losing some time here. If only I was castled, I would maybe I would win material. Some kind of trick. Tough. What did you guys want me to play? Queen takes knight? What are you guys talking about? I played c takes d5, knight takes. Am I missing something here? Knight c6. Oh, you're talking about lines with like queen takes c3. Yeah, but how am I going to force that? Right. Yeah, there's funny variations like knight b3. Bishop, queen takes c3, b takes c3, bishop takes c3, knight takes f2 check. What if knight takes c3 and then pin the bishop and knight with e5? Fork them. No, the problem with knight takes c3 is that he plays bishop d2. You know, that's what I anticipated here. So knight takes c3, he doesn't have to recapture. He can just play bishop d2. You know, that's one of the virtues of having his queen on d3. No, that's what I was bothered by, and he's going to take back on c3 with the bishop. Yeah, of course. I mean, he might have other tricks in that sort of position, like queen e3 if I go e5, but no, I think he's going to play bishop d2, and it's going to be more or less equal after bishop d2. I don't have any discoveries after bishop d2. I'm pretty sure. Of course, I could be wrong. Knight takes c3, bishop d2. No checks, no threats. This queen e3 looks very thematic. Now he's staying on my e7 pawn. He has bishop h6 sometimes. So black can't afford to waste too much time here. But by the same token, okay, obviously I can castle. That I'm dropping. No, I'm not dropping anything. Feels more balanced somehow to play knight c6 first. It's going to get very complicated. Knight c6, knight b5, castles. Bishop c7, b6. That seems okay. White seems like he's still better. But his king side is still undeveloped. I don't know. Castle queen side. Definitely a funky position. Oh. Oh no. So what am I supposed to play there, if not knight to c6? Castles? Oh, man. Oh, okay. I just saw a resource I hadn't noticed earlier. I guess this is the accelerated dragon player in me playing this position. But I was in a complete panic because of knight b5. I hadn't seen knight e6 before. I was talking about castles, but I guess you could play knight b5 castles, knight, queen takes c5, a6, winning back a piece. There's all sorts of nasty stuff like bishop c7 there. Doesn't look like it works. After knight b5 I have knight e6, which seems to hang on. The position just continues to get stranger and stranger, but his king is in the center, my king is in the center. I can castle king side, he can only castle queen side. seems like he's also in that pin. Knight takes c6. This looks like a mistake, for sure. I mean, I guess he wants to play like bishop e5 or something. Kind of a tough call. I mean, I've got rook b8. Well, I don't have rook b8, so I guess I have to take with the d pawn. Oh, he doesn't have that. No, I think that knight takes c6 is a big mistake. It was a really tense position. But I mean, this is very complicated, Abaraba. After knight b5, knight e6, I have no idea what's going on. I mean, ultimately, maybe you're playing a3 and b4. You can't though, and I'm threatening a6. It's a little too complicated for me, honestly. I don't know what's going on after knight b5, knight e6. But this has got to be okay for me. He exchanged off his knight on c6. That should help black. You know, in some endgames, I could even play bishop takes c3 if he would trade queens. He doesn't have bishop e5. Maybe he was counting on this move. I don't know. But that's not available. Just don't forget not to hover your hand over the resign button. He has bishop h6 maybe. You know, there's a situation where I should consider taking on c3. It's debatable though. To give up my bishop, probably not a good idea. Maybe I should consider castling queenside. This white squared bishop come into e6, I guess, hitting the c4 pawn. White's kingside not developed. Maybe we'll both castle queenside. If one of us castles queenside, then the other guy can't. You know, so if he castles queenside, uh-oh, g4. g4 looks too slow. It's a sort of sucker move. Well, I don't really want to take that pawn, but I could. I mean, I have every move under the sun here. Knight e4. Just develop with bishop e6. Take the pawn on g4. This looks suddenly tremendous for black. Basically winning. Okay, knight e4, like queen takes e4, bishop takes c3, check. That looks really bad. The thing about knight e4 though, it doesn't develop any pieces. Still, it would shake him up a bit, you know. I think if I play bishop takes g4, everything's good. It's hard to decide on a move. Bishop takes g4 is good. Good enough. Knight e4 is good too. So I'm missing something major here. You can do anything. I mean, bishop takes g4, bishop e6, knight e4. Someone even suggested knight e6. He made two bad moves. Trading on c6, that's violating principle, right? Bringing my pawn to a powerful square at c6. It's like in the Sicilian, you don't usually take on c6. Trading off a centralized knight for a knight that just developed itself on c6. So we're gonna trade. There's no tricks here. And this pawn structure is a mess. This is bad. Everything. We just take on g4. Maybe there was a better way to play it, but again, my time starts to run out. Guys, we have time for at least one more long game today, and then maybe at the end we can play a blitz game if we have a little extra time. Tomorrow is a regular 5-3 up to 8-3 time control. There's nothing fancy for me here. I just have to lift this pawn and let him castle. You know, on the plus side, he gets the castle, but his structure is wasted. There could be some issues with my pawn on b7. I should think about that. This is a rather important pawn for me. You know, securing the structure. Maybe at some point I can play e5 and give myself the ability to play queen c7 and guard the b7 pawn from rook b1 type of stuff. But it's good to think about your position holistically. Not just like I'm up a pawn. Just the general health of your position. You know, how, if you don't know what to calculate or think about, how am I doing? You know, how's my pawn structure? How's my coordination? Are all my pieces working? Blaze of Glory said, William, can I challenge you? We've got a number of challenges, and we've only got time for one more game. Abul Fazl is next. Come back any other day this week. Bishop e6. Right. So we're going to castle. He cannot afford to jettison the c3 pawn and lose his right to castle. Then we play e5, I think. I mean, I'm not in love with e5, blocking my own bishop, honestly. But I'm a little concerned as to how to protect my b7 pawn. Maybe queen a6, actually, is a good way to do it. We have queen a6. But I also need to protect my e7 pawn and b7 pawn. First thought was e5. It is kind of weakening. It also blocks my own bishop. So this move is defending and attacking at the same time. And I just realized I had queen a6, which is probably a good defensive move. Ultimately, still doesn't solve all the issues in the situation. He might be able to put pressure on e7, like bishop g5. Maybe I can play bishop f6 and just trade. You know, I'm up a pawn with a better structure, so trading is okay. Yeah, this is actually a pretty sensible move for white, but honestly, he's just not threatening anything. So I can take the pawn on a2 and c4 is hanging after that. How are we going to do this? Queen takes a2, rook a1. Queen takes c4. Yeah, this has got to be good for black. All of his... He's going to end up 2 pawns down. I mean, that's all he's got here. 2 pawns down and a worse structure. Guys, check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training. I do upload all the streams over there. 4 pawn islands, the maximum you can get. Absolutely. The maximum is always better. Bishop e5. He's just losing all his pawns. But never let your guard down. I'm checking to see if he has tactical tricks. I think here I should consider rook d4 threats for him, and rook h4 type of stuff, attacking my king. I don't know what I can do about it, honestly. Oppose the d file. Alright. Which rook? Got a little too low on time here. I was just thinking if I took on c4, he's got some entry points like c7 now. But now he doesn't have rook d4, which was my main concern. Yeah, now his one idea is to play h6. So I have to stop that. Oh my goodness. Wow, nice try from Abaraba. He did beat me once. Well, he's gonna snipe one of my pawns. He didn't take it. Totally in panic mode. And this is an awful move. Alright, just got kind of random at the end there, guys. We have time for one more game for sure. It got a little bit messy. Let's see if I was ever worse. I don't think so. We always had it under control, I guess. It's going to take this a while, but no, I don't think I ever made any blunders at the end. Alright, guys, last game, Abu Fazl. You do have... Oh, he doesn't have any rated games. Okay, Abu Fazl, I can't play a provisional player, dude. Sorry about that. We have to require everybody plays at least 50 games in order to play. So I didn't realize you were unrated. You have to come back next time when you've got an established rating, because I've been trolled by too many people who just created new accounts. Sorry, Abu Fazl, to pull a Oscar awards on you, but sorry, Abu Fazl, you didn't win. Mitar, I'm gonna play e4. Mitar's not here, and then I'll have to play Abu Fazl. But I don't really want to play somebody who doesn't have a rating, established rating. Mitar is not here. Mitar, where are you? We'll give him like a fair 45 seconds. Sorry, Abu Fazl, where is Mitar? I guess he gave up when I accepted the other challenge. No, alright. Yeah, I said I was going to play e4, but I lied. Alright, let's play e4 here. This is not really a great move order, but I'm going to try it. You know, now d4. Mitar is 2200. Abu Fazl, I didn't mention it, but I have a rule that I require everyone to play at least 50 games before I accept their challenges. So Mitar, I'm playing the advanced variation of the French played queen b6. This is main line. And now bishop d3 is the so-called, nice arrow. Bishop d3 is the Milner-Barry gambit. Please say name faster. Yeah. It sounds like a made-up name, Abu Fazl. Is it a real name? Please say it faster. You mispronounce it. Queen b6. He wrote, "Good luck, have fun." I'm sorry. I mean, I didn't really have time to check his account. You know, it was like question mark, question mark. Every single rating was provisional. So I don't mean to like torture him. He did write, "Good luck, have fun." He'll be back hopefully tomorrow. Tomorrow we're playing Blitz and classical chess. Abu Fazl. Yeah, I'll say it like 100 times really fast. I mean, is that a real name? I don't think so. 97, yes, that is one of the moves, right? And the other line is, I mean, more common, I guess, to play knight h6. Some people don't like to have their pawns doubled. I can understand that, but it's a very, very important piece, the bishop on c1. So taking on h6, pretty controversial. I don't know what the deal is with this position, honestly. What would Nimzovich do? Take on c5 or something weird like that? Am I supposed to take on c5, then you play like queen c7? Is that right? And go after my e5 pawn? I wish I absolutely knew any theory here. Knight a3. I'm supposed to play this, right? I probably analyzed this from Black's perspective once. Mitar, you're lucky because I don't really play the advanced variation. Just that lately I was studying all these games that Nimzovich played, and just kind of inspired by it. And then I played knight f3. A6, really? Here? Now I would assume that knight f5 is basically standard. Knight f5, knight c2. The theory just starts there. But a6 looks kind of weird. Mitar was afraid of knight b5, but I think that he's wasting a little bit of time. Maybe it's not a big deal. I don't know. Maybe a6 isn't so bad. Guys, anyway, check out the YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube. If you do play in the stream, you want to watch the stream later, you can check it out there. I'll upload this later today with the simul stream from last night. Every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Central European, I do a 20-player simul here on lichess. Last night we were unfortunate to lose 2 or 3 players right from the get-go, but it went pretty well. So he's basically played a6 in a standard position. Now I know that I can do g4. But here I'm just thinking, I mean, I've seen Joel Benjamin play with his king on f1 in these kind of advanced Frenches, but there's no bishop e4 check, actually, so there's no king f1 necessary. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do, to be perfectly honest. I mean, we have a space advantage in the center with the e5, d4 pawns. We can knock out the knight on f5 potentially with something like knight e3. I could have played that last move, but my b2 pawn is going to be hanging when I play bishop takes e3. Maybe f takes e3. I mean, this is something I could play. But I'd rather get castled first and then think about active operations. You know, I'm sure that a lot of players play like b3, bishop b2. I know that's a typical plan. It's pretty ugly to defend the d-pawn that way, though. b3, bishop a3 could be an idea as well. Finally, you could take on c5 a la Nimzowitsch and put a knight on d4, I guess. b4, knight d4. Rook e1, anybody? Kind of a waiting move. Looks debatable. Now, this is the kind of position where I think if the structure gets fixed with CD at some point, maybe the knights could be stronger than the bishops with so many pawns on the board. Really, really strategic situation. I think that white plays bishop d3 and black gets greedy and tries to take the d4 pawn. He loses the queen with bishop b5 check. Monkey d-bill, that's happened in one of my games. I mean, that's the Milner-Barry variation. Of course, you can play bishop d3 straight away, sacrificing the pawn all together after bishop d7 and no checks. But this is more of a positional line for white with bishop e2. But I'm just thinking, yeah, maybe now we start thinking about bishop d3 and messing up his pawn structure. I'm not sure. Should I play something like rook e1 at some point? Just to reinforce the center and slightly improve that piece. I mean, he's going to catch up in development soon. But I guess bishop d3. Bishop d3 is the idea. I know that g4 is played, but I honestly don't really like it. Sometimes there's traps. There are traps like g4, knight h4, knight takes h4, bishop takes h4, g5, and the bishop on h4 gets like suffocated. Of course, if I play g4, he could also play knight h6. He doesn't have to play knight h4. But not being that familiar with this variation for white, I'm playing kind of hesitantly. You know, I just have never played this position in my life more than like a couple of offhand games. And then I didn't know what I was doing, as I still don't know what I'm doing. I have to play on principle here. Rook e1 should be a fairly useful move. Of course, it would be more typical, like my knight was on d2 and going to f1. So again, we have what Monkey D-Bill was talking about, like bishop d3, take, and then like bishop takes h7 check, winning his queen on d4. So I'm not facing losing my pawn, potentially. Tan is using the French against Muzishuk's e4. The French is the one opening I don't really play on the stream, or really, it's not really in my repertoire at all. I've tried pretty much everything. I've played only 3 French defenses in my life, I think. One was against Hikaru, where Hikaru had started playing d4 a lot, and I thought that if I played d4 e6, he would go into some kind of queen pawn game, but then he called my bluff, basically, knowing that I don't play the French. He played e4. It was a very stupid idea by me. And ironically, I lost to Hikaru in advanced French. Alright guys, last game for today. It looks like a 10 struggle. Mitar is 2200. But you know, you get the feeling when he plays a6, he's not a theoretical player. You know, I mean, I don't know the French very well, but I'm sure that that's not... Actually, I'm sure that's not a standard move. I could take on c5. Again, I guess he plays queen c7. Then maybe some c4 or something weird. But this move c4, now we go into a whole new dimension. White really should have the upper hand here. Do I want to take the knight or not? You know, we could play... I mean, it is my good bishop. Bishop f1. Bishop takes f5, pawn takes f5. The d5 pawn looks very weak there. But he can obviously protect with bishop e6. Kind of a tough call. Bishop f1. It looks like we should have good chances on the king's side. You know, now that he's played c4, he's taking the pressure off. I'm just not really certain I like bishop takes f5 here. It's probably okay for white. But actually, I had another game not that long ago against a guy. I think, ironically, he was also a Russian player who defended really well in one of these bad French type positions. It's not that easy for white, you know, and that's a good piece. My white square bishop. So, like Mr. Smyslov in the winnower, we're going to go back to f1 and maybe redeploy with g3 and play this like a King's Indian attack for white. Black has to reorganize and try to assail me on the queen side. It is going to be interesting to see how this goes down, but I mean, if anything, maybe I'll challenge his knight with my knight. Put my bishop on g2. How am I going to break him down on the king's side? g4 only in the case of maybe f6. No, honestly, we might be able to do g4 now. In the right situation, maybe we can just like spatially crush black with a massive kingside expansion. Yeah, I don't really like c4. I mean, I think that Rubinstein is like rolling over in his grave when he sees that move. But because it's, you know, it's not necessarily positionally correct, doesn't mean that it's easy to punish. You know, theoretically, I should have a good chance to take him down on the king side. Basically, there's no more, you know, chance for him to have counterplay in the center. Queen c7. I mean, g4 followed by g5. It's very primitive. It's also very forcing. g4, knight h4, take, g5. f6, g takes f, g takes f, queen g4 check, resigns. Ouch. We play in that variation with g4. No, he can play knight h6 actually. I might also play, I might have something like bishop f4 here. Certainly not bad. G4, knight H6, bishop takes H6, pawn takes H6. Our king side's also a little weakened there. Play something quiet like G3. So G4, knight H4, take G5, F6, take, Queen G4 check, Queen G7 I overlooked, and I don't win a piece there. So I'm not so sure. I mean, G4 is really weakening. G3, F6. I firmly believe this position is good for white, but I have to find the right idea. How about just bishop F4 here? F6, we talked about this. I don't know, G4, knight H4 just looks too weakening. Take G5, F6. I'm just paralyzed. Alright, I don't know. Just gonna play strategically. Try to slowly get control of E5. I'm not sure about this. The first variation is obviously F6, pawn takes F6, queen takes F4, pawn takes E7. But I thought that should be slightly better for white, you know, because the E5 square looks weak. Yeah, G4 looked a little too early to me. I don't really like bishop F4, you know, like in front of my F pawn, which would tend to advance. Plus the bishop is blocked by its own pawns here. But this is a really long-term position. I mean, it's going to take both sides attacking on opposite sides. King's Indian attack style situation. If this is a King's Indian attack, my pieces are actually on the right squares. You know, G3, H4, bishop F4. That's very standard King's Indian attack against the French. I mean, I just didn't see anything clear there. G4, knight H4, take, G5, trying to trap his bishop. He has F6, which, you know, with the queen coming across to G7, he seems to be okay. This is strong point position. Just trying to keep control of the key situation that gives me the space advantage, the key point that allows me to have a space advantage in the first place. All right, ambulances. that's the first time I've had the window open for an extended period of time on stream here for quite a while. It's nice that it's not freezing temperatures. Bishop f4. Yeah, of course, Black Blaze of Glory said b5. You know, Black theoretically, you know, should be going for that queen side, b5, b4, a5. But I think he wanted something else. You know, he wanted to try to fight back on the king side. But it kind of goes against the grain of the position to play, you know, f6 is the mortal sin in some famous Nimzovich games. Basically attacking the head of the pawn chain, according to Nimzovich was, and according to everybody pretty much since. I mean, it's risky business to close the center with c4 and play f6. It happens, you know, it happens sometimes in the winnower. I'm not a French defense player, really, so I'm not an expert in like exceptional positions where f6 happens anyway. But I've certainly seen my share of winnower Frenches where Black has to play f6, you know, even though White has strong point on e5 and Black's played c4. Sometimes it's just the only way for Black to get counterplay. Yeah, thematically, the move would be like b5, b4. But remember now that he's got a knight stuck on f5. So right, I mean, he could run into serious trouble if I make any more consolatory. Is that right? Consolatory? It sounds like conciliatory. If I can make any more consolidating moves, you know, a few more consolidating moves, something like g4 would just like finish him, you know. Maybe something as simple as someone suggested queen d2. Something as simple as like queen d2 and... Alright, now h5, that is pretty extreme. He's basically trying to secure the f5 outpost, but it's very risky to do that with your king castled king side. Now he can try to set up a Gurgenidze Caro-Kann type of thing with like g6, but it's gonna be about as ugly as the game I lost to Nakamura. No, I put up a fight against Hikaru, but he took me out. All right, so queen d2, and then eventually I can play g3, h3, g4. I would think. In fact, I mean, yeah, queen d2 is probably a good move. We'll throw that in there first, guarding my bishop. Guarding against the possibility of bishop h6, I mean knight h6, and connecting my rooks. The possibility of a trade of dark square bishops on g5 even, in the right circumstance. But mostly, we're just going to play g3, h3, g4, and open up the king side. Now he comes with the queenside counterplay. It should be too little too late. You know, I can think about positional stuff here too. If I play h3, h4, you know, so I have to play g3 first. And we have two possible plans. I mean, bishop h3. You could look at that again. You know, possibilities of bishop h3, bishop takes f5. Once again, you know, this is totally standard King's Indian attack now that we've transposed to. Bishop on f4, rook on e1, bishop on f1 or g2 or h3. But I have some flexibility. Like normally I would have played h4 already in the King's Indian attack, and here I haven't played h4, so we can play for g4 basically. And I don't want to play a3 because it will weaken the b3 square on the queen side probably. So I guess we'll just pass on that. No, at some point maybe I'll have to. Bishop g5, h3, b4, g4. This should be good. It looks a little slow. 15-2. Last game for today. G6 for black isn't better. Yeah, I'm not sure it is either, Freya chess queen, because it really weakens the king side. Like I was saying, I mean, G6, King G7, Rook H8, there it is. But it's like, wow, okay, he's making the G7 square for the king, but for the knight, but it's really ugly. Dark square weaknesses. Just really bad dark square weaknesses here for black. Still, the position doesn't win itself. Would be good to come up with something concrete. King H1. My bishop's actually getting in the way here. What should I play? Like bishop D2? Bishop E2, excuse me. Knight G5. Knight E3 is another idea. Alright. Just a standard King's Indian attack. Just another King's Indian attack. Maybe I can go like King H2. King H2 opposite the queen on C7 I don't really like. I'd love to play bishop G5. King H2, Rook G1. He played Queen D8, stopping bishop G5, I guess. I mean, bishop H6 looks pretty strong, actually. The black king side should be... Whoa. Oh man, I don't know. Okay. G5. I'm just going to play G5. Lock it down. Maybe this is a mistake, but I think this pawn will fall on H4. We have no bad pieces. Black has a very bad bishop. We have this massive space advantage. Uh-oh. But I overlooked something. I'm going to end up sacrificing a pawn here. Or what? This is not planned. Mitar is coming back. Man, this was not part of the plan. But his rook's not practically trapped here. Apparently not. B3 almost works. Try to sacrifice a piece. I'm like making illegal moves. Wow. offers a draw. I don't know, guys. I feel like I totally screwed this position up. Well, I guess there's two ways to make a perpetual here. Alright guys, entertaining game. Thank you for the game, Mitar. I think we were both lucky not to lose. We'll be back tomorrow with more Blitz and Classical Chess tomorrow at 10 a.m. CET. Don't hate me for the mistakes here at the end. It was a really sloppy game by Mitar and I, but we tried. It was the last game of the stream, I'm sure. I was a little tired, and he tried his best. After a dubious opening, was a good save, though I'm sure he was winning at some point. Thanks again, guys. We'll be back tomorrow again, 10 a.m. CET. Blitz and Classical between 5 and 8 minutes with 3-second increment tomorrow. Check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube. Anybody who's interested in training or lessons, send me an email, videochesstrainer@gmail.com. And again, I thank everyone for supporting the stream and my YouTube channel via PayPal. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.